Welcome to the most forward-thinking, inspirational podcast in this reality. The show designed to challenge everything we've been taught. If you've ever felt there had to be more to life, more to existence, then you're listening to the right podcast. Time to open your mind and dive in. This is the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast.
And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Today I have with me a very exciting guest. A very exciting guest for me, I would say. You can see her name because it's probably in the headline. I'm not sure if it is because I haven't written the headline yet, but we'll see how that goes. But this is a friend of mine from, 20 years ago, if that's even fucking possible somehow. You all heard me talk about my past, where I came from, where I grew up in, coming from Ottawa, working in the bars, all the crazy shit that went down. This angelic little soul was there with me for a lot of it. And she, ironically, is doing doing a very similar thing to what I'm doing. It's a Mind Blossom is her project. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. It's just fascinating to see the caliber of people that went from chaos to, I want to say, clarity or brevity or something, and how a lot of it ties into growing mentally, growing in a space that you need to grow into to A, help yourself, and then B, help others. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce to you my good friend, whom I haven't talked to in probably 20 years, Yulia and Andrea. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for the very kind introduction. Also, thanks so much for making me feel super old. I think it has been 2 decades. How is that even possible? It's insane.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'll forgive you one day. I think, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I'm still, 16, 17, 18, having just moved to Ottawa. And even though I've, become a quote unquote adult, whatever that means, sometimes
not what it used to mean.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't feel like that much time has passed, but we were just talking before we started recording, but at the same time, it feels like lifetimes ago. Truly, like you almost don't recognize who you were or where you were. Like it feels surreal. I think that's a really good word to describe, surreal.
Well, do you remember, I'm sure you remember, almost every night after the cabin, we'd all go to Zach's Diner for breakfast.
Oh man, how can I forget?
Right.
The poutines I consumed is just, I think, really unhealthy.
Yes, absolutely. But I bring that up because we sit here, no joke, 20 years later, and I'm immediately thrown back to 20 years ago, 4 a.m., 3 a.m., eating terrible, delicious food and laughing with 10, 15 people that you all just went to war with.
Yeah, we were definitely in the trenches together. It's funny. I truly, there's a dichotomy of social media, and I discuss this a lot in the work that I do with Mind Blossom, and I host some live streams and starting a podcast, just to have these vulnerable, open conversations. And it's so important to focus on the fact that like we're all connected in so many different ways, but that connection that like, what am I trying to say? Back in the day, we were truly in the trenches together. It's funny you say war, and that really stays with you, for better or for worse. And I might kind of trailed off there. I don't know what I was going with that, but
no,
just the fact that you said war, just like, we were in the trenches together, and that like bonds you, but changes you. And then years later, we truly probably haven't talked in 20 years. We keep in touch. That's the beauty of social media, even though there's really horrible parts to it. And, I've kind of followed what you're doing. I think we said hi here and there, but I still feel this connection to you after all these years. And I think it really is because of the the breadth of what we went through together. I mean, we went through the worst of times, the best of times in like such a small amount of time. It's a roller coaster.
It's funny too, because it really does boil down to, again, the math of it. When we were 20 years old, 2 months at 20 years old was a summertime. Like 3 or 4 months we were grinding. Like it was every single day that we were grinding, and whatever it was, like it doesn't seem like people wouldn't be like, oh well, that seems like a lot. It's like being a bouncer, being a server, being a hostess. We're constantly seeing the worst in people, all the drunks, all the time, harassing you. We have to deal with it. We have to fight with it. And it just becomes second nature. But when you look at a 20-year-old that's doing that and say, 10 months, that's a solid 5% of your entire life, back then. And mathematically, now that we're 40, it's 2.5%. It's not the same. It's not the same. Like if we had to do something now that was like a 2-month project, it wouldn't seem as much as if we had to do it at 20. I don't know if I'm making this clear, but when we spent that time that we did spend together back then doing what we were doing, it was all encompassing. Your whole life was the bar. You didn't have any time. You'd get home, you'd get to bed by 6, and some of us had school and classes and day jobs and stuff like that throughout the day. So it was just a grind. It was work. It was just us trying to figure out how to live, how to survive, how to do stuff. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I had 6 a.m. I was at Weedman. I was at the shop to get the gear to go out and do the lawn fertilizing at 6 a.m. At 2 p.m, I was done with Weedman and I was doing my own thing when I was doing Blue Diamond window cleaning. And then from 2 till 7, I was doing that. And then from 9 or from 8 or 9 till 2 or 3 in the morning, especially throughout the week, I was doing Gracie's, I was doing the cabin, I was doing foundation. So there was, you look back at that now, it's like, when the fuck did we ever find time to sleep? And how was our mental health the way it was? Absolute chaos. And looking back on it now, I'm like, I don't think you could pay me enough to put myself back into that situation.
It's interesting you say that. I've had these conversations with friends, with guests on my live stream, etc. I think that's a time in our lives, and I hope that's something that will change in the young person's life, that I hope we can change that narrative where you don't need to just survive. You can thrive. You're allowed to, but in a way, we weren't taught what that means, and in a very real way, especially during those days. And man, I haven't heard the word "the cabin" in so long. I'm having a very nostalgic moment right now. It's like you were taught, and obviously the food and beverage, the hospitality industry also kind of exacerbates this. You were taught that you either thrive or you survive, and that you can't do both. And you definitely, when you're young, you're not supposed to thrive. You're supposed to only survive. You're right. I couldn't agree with you more. You couldn't pay me any money to go back to that. Sometimes I think, how did I work till 4 or 5 in the morning and then go to class at 8 a.m. and, graduate with honors? How?
Yeah.
Just how? And also why? And I think now, and obviously we're getting older, and just so you know, I'm 37. Okay. I'm not quite 40 yet. So settle down with the big 40.
That's wild. I'm 43. Wow, it's crazy.
But I have one late night now. Of course life gets in the way. The dogs are sick, or I don't know, you have a project and you pull a late night, or I've done a couple all-nighters, a handful here and there for work projects, etc. Or you're so stressed you can't sleep. Adam, I'm literally spent. I cannot function for like a week.
Yeah.
When I don't get that kind of rest and that kind of sleep. It's actually insane. And we would just, work so late, and most of us have multiple jobs, and I always appreciate that about you. And I think we really connect on that. I always had multiple jobs too, where it's just, your entire day. And you're right. How did we end up here, intact?
That's something that I want that very question is what I want this show to be about. I want to know how you got to where you are, and I'll happily explain how I got to where I am. But it's amazing to think that from there to here, and nobody thinks about the journey. And one of the coolest things too is we don't We don't even think about from here to there. So 20 years from now is another multiple lifetimes away. And at 20 years, we're only 60. Sorry, you're not. So at 20 years, you're only 57, right? And then 20 years from that, you're a grandma at 77 or whatever, however it plays out for you. But 77, today's day and age, isn't even that old. So at 37 years from now, like a legitimate entire lifetime is sitting in front of you. And the majority of the world that sits in their depression or their anxiety is only looking at the past, only looking at what was. Every single morning I wake up, I'm so excited for what's going to happen today and how the future is going to shape up. I remember being depressed. I remember being completely riddled with anxiety, being like, I wish for the old days. I wish to be in my 20s again. And it wasn't even until like mid 30s, 35 years old that I was like, I'm over it. And I'm looking forward to something else. And it wasn't until about 38 that I was like starting to get excited for the future. Because it was around 37 that I completely turned my back on, all kinds of recreational drinking, drugs, and all that sort of stuff. I just said, I'm done with this. And giving that up is like giving up a piece of your youth. Because then you're like, okay, well, now we have to sort of do other things. What else is out there? And when you start asking yourself what else is out there, you start getting answers. And they're weird. And it's cool. But
I think that's a really good way to describe it. It's weird and it's cool.
Yeah.
It's true. And I find that I'm sure this happens in all college towns, but especially Ottawa. I'm really thankful. I had a really good upbringing, really good childhood. So I've always had that strength to fall back on. But for as long as I can remember, because you brought up, recreational use of drinking, etc. For as long as I can remember, up until really my mid-30s, which is I kind of am now. So I feel like we have like a similar timeline. I forgot that you're a little older than me. Yeah. And I just, have to remind your audience of that.
Yeah, I'm older, everyone.
Welcome.
I'm older. I'm the old one here. I'm okay with it.
I had to really completely turn the way I saw drinking upside down. I never had a problem, but for years, it felt like when you're in a social situation, we're at a party, even when you're bartending, that is that lubricant, that you hear about that allows you to be, more fun, more alive, more smiley, more dancey, etc.
Well, even back in the day, we were encouraged to drink. It's not like that now and hasn't been for years, but in our day, it was.
Yeah. I've maintained bartending here and there, honestly, for fun and just for some extra cash on the side. And it is that social aspect, especially post-pandemic, when you really needed some, that social connection with people.
Right.
And I've always been good at it. I can't think of any places I've worked at in recent years where that was allowed. It was literally against policy. And you're right, back in the day, it was against policy not to have a shot. Mm-hmm. Someone buys you a shot, you have it. Yeah. Someone, wants to give you a drink, you take it. Have a few drinks before work. Loosen up. You think back of all these labels, and then you start believing that that's how things go. Oh, I can't be loosened up without this, or I can't have fun without this. And it took me a long time to change that narrative. I never really felt good drinking. I don't really drink anymore. All the time I'll have a glass of wine. And it's crazy. A few years ago, I went through a really hard time, and we can talk about that, a really, really dark time. And I really just had to turn everything I thought about this kind of stuff on its head. And I realized when I stopped, all different generations, think about our parents' generations, smoking was smoking was no big deal because there's no research on that yet, etc. It really changed how I feel on the inside, and it made me realize I don't need to do anything to be my fun self, to be at a party, to be out, and I listen to myself more. Back in the day, you and I'm sure you can resonate with this. You felt obligations a lot. You'd be tired, I gotta go out, or there's a sense of FOMO. We hear that. Now I just listen to myself more no, I don't need to do this. And especially if I feel like I need to have a drink to loosen up, just go and have fun.
Do you remember when On Tap, actually it wasn't On Tap. It had just switched over to Jesus. I'm drawing a blank on it. What would... Anyway, the On Tap building. It had just switched over to something.
What did it change to? Oh, man, I'm blanking too.
Man, we were there all the time.
It's been a long time ago.
Excuse me. Wow. To anyone listening right now, Cam Simmons would tell us what it is. Holy jumping! I'm sort of picturing the logo. You know, it's going to come to me, and it was right across. So Minglewood's was Pub 101, or Pub 101 was Minglewood's, and right across from that was the whiskey, and maybe it was the whiskey that I'm thinking of. No, because that was the other one. Anyway, I'm rambling. It was on tap.
You're right. Yeah,
it was on tap. Whatever it was. And they had industry night was Monday night. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure you were around for this, but so industry night was Monday night and they drew the crowd. And if you were industry, drinks before 9 p.m. were free. So we would load up the drinks and bring them to the table and we would just get annihilated for the rest of the night. And this was the worst because I remember Mondays were like the one day that I'm like, everything's finally done. I can sit down, I can relax, I can do anything. But now I have to go out and get trashed, and you have to force yourself to drink to go out and drink.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Oh man!
When you say that out loud, and there's a sense of like the who's who of people, you know, and it was a very hierarchical kind of system, especially in Ottawa. There's something very special, but also very weird about Ottawa, especially when I think back, or even some people that are still there. Obviously, no judgment against people in that industry, but there was this sense of, you know, you have to go out to continue kind of like your status and the status quo. And yeah, you're right. It's so insane to think about dragging yourself out to get absolutely smashed, to feel like you're part of something.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people too. I mean,
it's sad when you think about it.
Well, when you talk about having a healthy childhood, and that's, you know, that's interesting, an interesting side to that, because I remember, you know, I'd say 95% of the people in the bar industry are seeking family because they don't have one, and I was there for that. I was seeking family and camaraderie, you know, with the people. I made brothers there that I don't even talk to today, but at the time it was huge. So that was the thing. Like you know, as a team, you banded together and you went out, and you know, I don't know. And like you said, you know, looking back on it now and sort of saying to yourself, I don't need a drink to have that kind of fun. That's like step one in proper mental health. That's you taking back your life. And alcohol is forced on us, our generation specifically, from day one. All of the commercials when TV was still a thing, all of the commercials were like Kokanee, Weekend Escape, Getaway, Absolute Vodka, must drink responsibly, tons of flavors, you know. Every single commercial was must be legal drinking age, must be legal drinking age. So our entire lives until we were 19, we were pre-programmed to want to get destroyed. Every kid got a 2-4 for his 19th birthday. Yeah. And then,
it's like a rite of passage, like you black out for your 19th birthday, you know? Like there's no other way.
No, it's weird. And kids today aren't even drinking. And I find that fascinating. Like drinks are ridiculously expensive. You know, back in the day it was $2.50 for a beer. Now it's like $10. And there's no prompt for them to go out because nobody's watching TV and nobody's online pushing Coors Light, Coors, the mountain beer. Nobody's pushing this shit.
And really, like all the social activities. It's funny. Let me go back to when you said seeking family. I love my family. I'm really close with them. My mom, my dad, my brother had a really wonderful childhood. I had wonderful friends back in the Toronto area before moving to Ottawa. But because I was so far away from everyone, I will say I resonate with that need too, because my family was far away. I mean, I was born in Romania. If you want to talk like my whole family, I mean, most of them are in Europe. I have family in Canada. We're all over. Now I'm in the United States. That was another very attractive thing to this, like being in the trenches together, being close, and then kind of creating, like you said, our own family. Because while I had a really great family, I was, 5-6 hours by car away from them. And I believe kids have are forced to figure out what they want to do, quote unquote, the rest of their life and go away to school way too young.
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, I have a late birthday. I was 17, but what do I know when I'm 17? I barely knew anything or who I was. And there's a lot of soul searching that happens. So I think that's part of it too. But yeah, it is interesting looking back at not just our social activities, but all of my jobs, give or take a few of them. And then later on in the last few years of my studies were all centered around alcohol or activities with alcohol. I worked for Coors Light. I was a Coors Light girl for the beginning of my residency in Ottawa. And these, a lot of those activities. You remember Mystery Mansion, and it was like, male fantasies and drinking and shots and sexiness. And do you remember those? And then
I remember
the bartender served.
I remember all that stuff. I remember the outfits, and like thinking back on it now, it's atrocious. But the stuff that like you had to wear, or that was the part of the attire to sort of draw the ire. Like you always had a great body, but you were always wearing super tight stuff. And I'm like, I was like. You don't think about it sort of at the time because everyone's kind of in that boat. But like looking back on it now, it's like they really the idea and the ethos of that time really put the kids through the gears. That's for sure. And it really took away their ability to self-identify as I'm good at this or I'm worthy because of. And it left them with I'm worthy based on what I look like. And that was huge too for both men and women back then. And that never really parlayed out, but it fucked a lot of people up for sure. Speaking of you being the Coors girl, as soon as you said that, it just flashed into my head. It was you that was giving us those tickets. Somehow you always ended up with a couple extra tickets hither and yon, and we always used to get seats behind the players' bench for the Sens games and that sort of stuff. So yeah, we used to go to all those games, like and all the events, all the cool events that were taking place. It was either us doing it or somebody we knew. Like, remember Blues Fest? Back in the day, we used to know who was running everything, and then we would just walk in, no problem. Now, ironically, I'm sure you remember Chris Ivey. He built the biggest security company in Ottawa. He's running the show now in Ottawa, which is really cool for him. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we just lost her, but that's okay. I've got her number. I can call her back. These are the fun trials and tribulations of doing a live show. Let's see if she'll answer.
Hey.
Are you back?
I'm back. I just dropped. That was so weird. I hope you can edit that. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I'm not going to edit that out. That's one of those things, because there's a lot of people that want to start a podcast, and there's a lot of people that are like, I can't do it. Everybody's so port polished and everything's so this, that, and the other thing, and they've got this preconceived notion of what they can accomplish. And so when things like that happen, technical difficulties, I just talked through it. So obviously you don't want dead air. So I just talked through it, and I said, oh, we've lost her. Let's see if we can get her back. So yeah, when you do your show, don't worry about it. Here's one of the greatest pieces of advice I was ever given. The desire to be perfect gets in the way of doing a really good job.
I love that. Honestly, this is so serendipitous because I've struggled with this idea of perfectionism, and you can probably remember this from me when you knew me back in Ottawa, like with schooling. I have really hard
in everything you did,
and sometimes
you were meticulous. Yeah, and a hair was never out of place on your head.
It's true, and for a long time I was like, it's a blessing or curse, but I've learned that it held me back a lot. And just recently I finished the book called Letting Go, and it's all about, silence your inner critic, learning how to let go. And there's this, I think it's chapter 2. Chapter 2 is all about this idea. It's actually, it was research from a professor at the University of Ottawa, which I thought it was just perfect, about this idea that perfectionism should not be a thing. It isn't a thing. It gets in the way, and that people, instead of striving for perfectionism, they should strive for excellentism.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, it's stuck with me. So it's so funny you say that.
There's also nothing to learn in perfectionism, right? Every lesson that we've ever taken from anything came from fucking up.
It's so true. And in my personal experience, it has in the past held me back or prolonged something that I really wanted to do because of this idea, well, I got to get it perfect. Well, if you're paralyzed and you don't move, well, where's the growth in that? And
right.
That's a lesson I learned the hard way. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Of course.
Yeah, let's go back to Chris Ivy. I love Chris. Chris was awesome. And, I recently saw something on Facebook about that, and I thought, amazing. If anyone deserves, success, it's him. He was always such a hard worker. So, yeah, sorry, where were you going with that?
Just that, back in the day, if it wasn't you or if it wasn't me, it was somebody. Like, if we didn't have it ourselves, we knew who did, and we could go and do it. And we could see all the events and do all the things and live the literal high life like celebrities, like being a bouncer and being in the position that we were in at that moment in time. It's like Facebook wasn't even really that big back then. It was just getting off the ground. So you still needed a VIP list, and you still needed to know somebody to get something or to do something, So it's kind of interesting because Ottawa is such a small town. You definitely felt that local celebrity vibe. Like, how many times did you go out by yourself or to the farmer's market in the morning and 4 or 5 people wanted to come up and talk to you? It was irrelevant. Wherever you were, somebody was yelling your name. And I don't know if you remember this, but my whole Facebook handle back then was never my name because I never wanted anybody to really know who I was. So I went by Wellen. And
yes, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember I couldn't find you. I was like, "Where are you?" And you're like, "Oh, yeah, okay,
yeah, that ain't me." Yeah, so people in the bars would yell, "Hey, Wellen, you're well endowed," because the last name was DOWD, and I thought that was hilarious. And people would just be yelling that across the bar. People would just look at girls, be like, "That's right." Like I said, to you before we went on the air with the show, like, if I had to sit with my 21-year-old self, I don't even know if I'd be friends with him because he was a fucking character. Actually, I wouldn't be friends with him. I mean, I'm not saying like if I had the opportunity to sit with myself, but if I met the character that was me at that age, at the current age that I am now, I wouldn't have time for him, is what I'm saying. But do I hate him? Fuck no. I every single one of my, I guess characters or yeah, for lack of a better term, the character that I was playing before I became aware, before I woke up, before I understood that everything that we're doing is a fucking game, and that, and one of the greatest quotes in the world is we're depressed and we're filled with anxiety because we take so seriously that which the gods made for fun. We're down here having fun, and that gets lost along the way when we get truly involved in our character, when we get truly involved in the thing that we think that we're supposed to be doing. And for me to have been able to have broken free from that, to see through the entirety of the illusion, and I shouldn't say the entirety because that implies that I'm done seeing. I'm not, but I see through enough of it to be like, wow, I can't wait to see what's next. And that's liberating and freedom invoking, and one of the most massive things in the entire world. And I can look back on this stuff and see beauty that I couldn't have seen before, beauty in flaws, beauty in character, beauty in confrontation, the fights that I got in with people over the stupidest things, just looking back on it, going and seeing how it sort of shaped and twisted and manipulated the version of me that is able to contribute, much like the version of you that is able to contribute to the mental health of others, to the idea of others. And people can say, what qualifies you to do that? And one of the biggest questions that I get asked when I start with a new client or whatever is, why would anyone listen to me? And the truth is, for every one person that's willing to speak, there are 1 million people willing to listen. I literally think that that's the math on this planet, because not many people are willing to speak. Not many people have the balls, the cojones, or the desire to stand up and say something and speak and be heard. And that's the thing. So anybody can hear my message 1,000 times over. But if they don't resonate with me, they're not really going to take the message in. Now, anyone listening to this show starts resonating with you and jumps over to your channel and starts listening to you, you get the opportunity to tell them relatively the same thing, but in your tone, in your vocabulary, and from your perspective and experience, they get the message and they start elevating. And I recently came across this quote too, and I absolutely love it. In the third dimension, we are in competition with each other. In the fifth dimension, in the third dimension, we are in competition with each other. In the fifth dimension, we're here to collaborate. And that's massive. When you realize that you're not in competition with anybody, but that you're literally here to share what you know with as many people as you can and amalgamate as much information as you can and work as a team with everybody to get to where we're equally trying to go. Beautiful.
I am so impressed and just
refreshed and energized right now by our conversation. And I always loved you. We always had the greatest of times, but hearing this version of yourself is actually so powerful because, as you mentioned, it's about having the courage to share your story. Mm-hmm. And I've learned in sharing mine in the capacity that I have, and my live streams, and even with people in my life that have gotten me to where I am now. There's not only power. There's not only healing power for myself, which I'm sure you've felt that too. But there's also the beauty of the shared human experience. When I went through my really hard time, you get to a point where you feel really alone, and you get into this little narrow shell, and it's very dark, and it's hard to see the light.
Do you know what triggered your hard time?
Yeah, so I can give a little context. So I went through a really, really tough divorce, really tough. And even though it was the right thing to happen, we were not meant for each other. We went our separate ways. I will cherish the time we had together, but we were just not right for each other. And it really did trigger. It was after just a really few tough years, trying to make it work and knowing deep down it wasn't right. I lived in Hawaii when I first moved to the United States, and then made this big move to the East Coast to work for a tech company, which I love my collaboration with them and the work that I'm doing and everything I learned. I mean, I always joke, I feel like I've had, several lives. I've done many career changes. My growth and career path has been incredibly nonlinear, and I'm very proud of that. But there was just so many changes, and this is kind of the kind of tipping point. And almost overnight, I felt this, even though deep down, like I said, I knew it was right, this darkness took over me because I never felt this intense sense of loss and failure.
Right.
And I've talked to other people about it, and it is hard for anyone that hasn't been married. I mean, I've had my fair share of relationships and breakups, and you knew me back then. We everything was kind of public knowledge. We all went through our drama and our times, but there's just something. I always envisioned having what my parents have, only being married once. That's something that I wanted, and I guess I carry that kind of bias because that's totally changed for me now. It's okay to realize that someone's not good for you, and it's okay to move on from that and choose you.
A lot of people don't get that as well. A lot of people don't understand that you can meet somebody and be with them and the marriage was perfect, but you were a version of yourself when you married that person, and unless they're willing to grow with you, then all you're doing is outgrowing them. And that shit weighs heavy on people because now you feel guilty about outgrowing somebody that you vowed to be with for the rest of your life. That's the power of words as well.
1,000%. And actually, the marriage should have ended probably 2-3 years prior, but I was my worst enemy. I convinced myself that no, you put in. I remember so vividly that the things I would say to myself, that inner voice that can be really damaging. You've had this time together, but you've been through X, Y, and Z together. Things could get better. And anyway, long story short, I just entered a pretty bad depression, one that I'd never felt
right
before. I'm a pretty positive, bubbly person. I pride myself on that. I'm naturally, I've always, trying to see the beauty in life. And I do have this, I don't know where I find it, the Romanian in me, this inner strength that I've been able to overcome some really difficult things in my life. But there's something about this. I just kind of completely fell apart. And I entered this moment of darkness where it felt so narrow. And for quite a while, it felt like I was the only one in the world feeling this way. Yeah. And I think that also with my surrounding, my parents are still married. A lot of my friends, married people, outside of university, they've been together forever. And I felt this like I said, a failure. Okay, so all my friends have, they're celebrating their 10-year anniversaries, and I can't, keep one marriage alive. These things that play in your head, and then
comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh my God.
you need to repeat that like on every single episode because it is so true. And
I'll make that the headline for this one. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes. And going through, I gave myself time to heal, to grieve. I mean, I'll be super honest. There was about a 2.5 week period where I didn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
And that's unlike me. I mean, I'm ambitious. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't recognize who I was. But there was a part of me at one point, I thought, am I going to be able to overcome this? Like, I knew I could, but it felt insurmountable at the time. And I don't think I've ever been able to, until this situation, been able to use that word. And only in starting to talk to people in similar situations who had gone through not just a breakup, a divorce, or disillusion of a marriage.
Regardless of that,
I realized
it's that was your particular catalyst, but what you entered was a dark night of the soul, one of many. And that is a huge preponderance where you say to yourself, who am I? Who am I trying to be? What am I fighting through? What is all this? And every ounce of everything you've ever known is out of your body, which is what kept you in bed for 2 weeks. And this is total failure. This is, how do I go on? What does life look like? This can't be permanent. Is this permanent? Am I fucked? What's going on here? And even getting out of that bed, you still had 2 weeks to a month and a half before you started feeling okay, and this is that thing where you're just, fake it till you make it and all that sort of stuff. But people don't get that. People don't understand that first of all, you're not the only one going through it. Everybody's going through something at some point. And, again, there's nothing new under the sun. That doesn't take away from what you're grieving, but it is, if done properly, giving you true power moving forward, because the realization and comprehension, understanding that you have, at this moment in time, you have overcome every single trial and tribulation that you've ever faced, and you stand stronger in front of people because of it, is monolithic. It's huge.
You've said that perfectly. It, as hard and dark as it was, it needed to happen. And I am a true believer. I know it's super cliche and corny, but everything happens for a reason.
Oh, yeah. Obviously,
this person came into my life for a reason. We grew a lot together. We did a lot of fun things together. That was a really beautiful chapter of my life. And then, it had to end. But the power in what I learned about myself, and I'll never forget how overwhelming thinking of getting out of bed and showering was, which is so crazy. You say that to me now, it's like, yeah, of course you're going to shower. These simplest of things, it's almost like it was maybe one of the first times in my life where I really had to shed a lot of myself to really find myself. And again, it sounds corny, but in a moment of soul searching, okay, not only is this thing over in my life, but then it kind of forced me to go deeper and really figure out, okay, well, what do I really want? Not just in a man or in a relationship, but what do I really want? Who am I? Yeah. Have I really ever really loved myself? Because, you have to love yourself before you can truly love someone. And then, and we can definitely tie it back to our previous conversation about, the Ottawa and my past. I think the answer was not really. My worth was always tied around, my looks, my body, especially having these jobs, the things I can provide for people, like my hookups, my, fun personality or the ability to party with and just, go with the flow, even if I was tired or didn't want to, etc. And it just forced me to do a lot of really hard work, and I'm very thankful for it. I don't wish a really dark time upon anyone, but sometimes you have to go through the darkest of times, the darkest of tunnels, to be able to see the light, and not just see it, appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
And I stand
hence
by
the
that.
duality of life. You literally just spoke on the duality of life. You, in the infamous words of Beavis and Butthead, you got to have stuff that sucks to have stuff that's cool.
You had to bring them into this.
Oh yeah, of course. But that's the duality. That's 100% the duality. So when you understand that all this trash that we have to deal with needs to take place so that we can fully embrace the good, because without the trash, there literally is no good. Because as great as things are, if we've got nothing to compare it to, hence the duality, then it itself becomes trash.
How will you appreciate something good if you've never seen the bad?
That's right.
How will you know, what, the value of a dollar if you haven't gone through a really hard financial time. And this is a conversation, just a small caveat that I've had with friends. I was born in Romania, and we were really poor, and, it was really hard times during the Ceausescu regime, as anyone that knows Eastern European history can attest to. And I've had, my parents are rock stars, and they're the reason why my brother and I have really good lives. But sometimes I've found myself in conversations with friends, especially living in the U.S., the land of opportunity, a lot of wealth. Just randomly, friends have asked me a question like, do you ever wish you grew up in North America? Or do you ever wish you grew up in Canada or the U.S.? Or, you had, people had things you didn't have. And yeah, do I wish I didn't struggle as much as I did in certain points of my life, or had, an easier time with, again, X, Y, and Z? But I always go back to, I wouldn't appreciate so deeply the things that I do if I didn't have that beginning. And I stand by that. I don't want anyone to suffer, of course. I don't want anyone to struggle. And hopefully one day when I have my own kids, they don't have to suffer and struggle. But that kind of deep appreciation I have just would be non-existent. And I see it in people that didn't necessarily have that. And I think that goes for anything in life.
Yeah. I mean, you want a direct comparison. Look at the rich kids. The rich kids have different problems than the poor kids. And that's a truth. But honestly, the rich kids don't seem that happy. You ever seen a spoiled brat that got everything and you watch them throw a tantrum? It's like, what the fuck are you even complaining about? You got this, and then you got X, Y, and Z. And what did I get for dinner? Well, we didn't have anything, so I got to go to bed early. Right. Yeah. I mean, I grew up, and I've shared that same story with numerous people. I grew up, I was so poor that I often had to go to bed early for dinner. That's a true story. And you look at this stuff and you think that it's that struggle that makes you fight more and push more. And it's funny too, how we talk to ourselves now with our adult voices, with our inside voice. But we look back at our kid selves. Like you said earlier in the show, you have fond memories of me. Back then, I was essentially suicidal, and I kept that as much as I could to myself. And I hated myself every single day. I hated myself. And that lasted literally the majority of my 20s. So it seemed that no matter what I did, no matter how many people I made laugh, no matter how good I did on my sales jobs or on my other jobs, or no matter how much money I made or what I could accomplish, it just simply, regardless of anything, was never enough. It was never enough inside my own brain. So when I look back, I think everybody looked at me the same way I looked at myself. And I look back and there's a voice in me that says everyone hates you. Right. And not now, but certainly as I was coming out of the first or second dark night of my soul, that's the thing. So the people that I've had on in the past, and I've spoken on this very topic on a few of my episodes in the past, and I've had people that listen to my show that I didn't even know listened to my show from high school, literally reach out to me and go, I went to high school with you and I don't remember you being that way. I just remember you being smiley and jovial and joking all the time and just a good person. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm so happy that that's the memory that you have. And these are the things that I need to work on for me. So I say this again because every single person out there puts out this image of I've got it all together, I've got it all figured out, or I'm smiling. You always had the biggest smile in the room, but there was always something behind your eyes. And even back then I had a gift to see through people and see certain things. I didn't know what it meant or what it was or anything like that. And every single time I spoke on it, people called me crazy. So I just shut up about it. But the more I look back and the more I see, the more I use that gift now today, it guides me perfectly. And it's all boundaries. And the boundaries that I've set now, the healthy boundaries that I've set now for my life moving forward, don't mean I've got it all together or anyone has. It just means that I have the ability to see essentially through the bullshit and to do my best to project myself into a position that I feel I need to be in for future growth, and to do it with a happy state of mind.
That's really beautifully said. And you really, I can attest to that. You always had that magical power to not just really see people for who they are. And I'm not going to say see through people. Like you would look into people's eyes, but you had a really amazing gift to break down people's armor a little bit. I know you did it with me. I went through, some hard times in university too, and the stress of the student and all the things that go on with that. But I think we all are taught from an early age to put on this armor. And I think it's only exacerbated now
Yeah.
fast forward X amount of years with social media, because what is social media? It's just a curated version of our lives.
It's a highlight reel.
And before social media, it was the armor that we put on. I mean, there was several people close to me in my life who didn't even know I had gone through a hard time. You know, knew my marriage was breaking down, but had no idea. And obviously, I wanted it that way. I didn't open up at the beginning. I put on my smile to go to work and on my Zoom calls and et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like as a society, we really need to reassess how we see people and give people the freedom and empower them to not have to put the armor on and not have to, curate this perfect life where nothing's wrong and their husband brings them flowers and they go on wonderful vacations to feel some sort of validation from the world. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges and things we can do for the next generation, to let people be their raw selves. And that's why I love these conversations. That's why the work that I do at Mind Blossom in fostering these, in my live streams, fostering these really vulnerable conversations where I hope, and I'm sure you do too, people listen and realize, okay, I don't need to be perfect. I can be honest. I can open up. And there is power in shared lived experiences. We all go through these things together. And I believe we're stronger together. And I also believe no matter what, whether you're 0 years old or 100, we're a work in progress.
Yeah.
Like no one is done. No one's ever done, quote unquote, whatever that means.
No.
And that's okay.
Yeah. One of those things that people don't grasp too is like when you talk about healing, and it sounds woo-woo juju, right? And the people that refuse to heal, the NPCs out there that refuse to heal, they're designed to sort of challenge you on your healing journey. They're designed to make you feel foolish as you heal. They're not everybody's real. Not everybody in this reality is real. I firmly believe that. I mean, the God's honest truth is there's only one thing. There's only one thing that you can ever know for a fact is real. And for me, it's that I have consciousness. Mm-hmm. I am conscious. That is the one thing I know unequivocally is real. I don't even know that you're real. I don't physically know that you're real. Because of my consciousness, you exist. But when you get past the singularity of it all, and you see that if you expand yourself past yourself, and you acknowledge that consciousness is the one truth of this realm, and you see past your individualism in that, you can say that consciousness exists. And because of consciousness, I exist, and Yulia exists, and this podcast exists, and the cabin exists, and Zach's Diner exists. I don't even know if it still exists, but it certainly did.
Does it?
Right. So that's the thing. Like it's not that my consciousness is real. It's that consciousness is real, and consciousness is awareness. And when awareness becomes aware of itself, well, that's a whole new game. And this is where you look around the world that you're in right now, and you see all of the things that take place in your life. You are on a path, and you've always seemed like a real person to me. That may sound like a strange statement, but you seem real. There are people. Think about the people in your life that you remember. You remember moments of me. In your experience, you and I have crossed paths, and we've danced, and we've laughed, and we've cried. And those memories are in your head. Mm-hmm. So I'm theoretically real to you. But think about all of the people that you've crossed paths with, the millions and millions of people that you see every day that aren't in your head. This is like without these characters in a movie, imagine two movie characters, going out for dinner, but the cast only hired the two people. So they go to a restaurant and there's nobody in there. There's no staff. There's no other patrons. There's no atmosphere. There's no ambiance. Be a really fucking weird movie, right? That's where we are. We're in that version of reality. And all of the characters are here because we are playing a game. Imagine playing a game. And the game is too difficult. So you're like, fuck it, I don't want to play. Or the game is too easy. So you cakewalk through it and you're like, that was fucking boring. The game has to be perfectly difficult for you. And it needs background characters, because if there's no opponents in the game, there's nothing to learn. Right? So that's the game. This trails back to what we were saying, how, we take so seriously that which the gods made for fun. Your struggle isn't meant to be permanent. Your struggle is meant to show you what you're made of. Your struggle is meant to be like, I can do more, I can be more. And the thing too is, once you get quote unquote more, if you stay there for too long, you start struggling again, because you cannot stay in one spot for too long unless you must continue to grow and move and challenge yourself. And this is one of those things. The best analogy that I've got is when I was car shopping. I was looking at a bunch of cars, and the car that I picked, I'm like, I absolutely love this car. It's right for me. It's in my price range. We're perfect. This is where I want to be. I was so elated to get this car. I was like, it's nice. It's brand new. It's shiny. It looks good. It's mean. It's going to be beautiful. I sat in the car for not even a split second, and my brain goes, yeah, but there's this car. So I was like, fuck you. It's like you didn't get the best and the ultimate. And this is the thing, you keep going down this path, right? And even when you say, okay, well, you could have got the extra version, you could have got this, you could have got that, you could have upscaled, you could have got the bigger, the this or that, you could have got the Ferrari, you could have got the Bugatti, you could have got the Lambo, you could have boom, 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 boom. At what point does your body say, nah? Because even when you buy the Ferrari, the Lambo, the this, that, and the other thing, typically you're like, whatever. Now it's just in the collection. Now I need something else, which is retail therapy. And Amazon, the Amazon company is hilarious, because if we want to give power to somebody else, Amazon made an absolute fortune off this algorithm. It's not about having the thing. It's about waiting for the thing. Becoming the person who gets the thing, which is legitimately the whole purpose of life. Who do you become on the journey to acquire the thing that you want? And Amazon capitalized on that. Right? How many times do people order off Amazon and they don't give a shit what they ordered? They don't even remember what they ordered. Right? And it's 24-hour delivery in most cases. So that box shows up and there's 3 things in the box. And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, I ordered this, that, and the other thing. Then they come back down and they go on their computer and they order some more stuff, because it's not about the stuff. It's about the anticipation of the stuff. And all of these algorithms, all this stuff going on. And when you look into social media, when you dive into social media, you look at the microcosm of social media. You've got cyber bullies, you've got pricks, you've got people that haven't, done their shadow work or their self work, and they want to rip on other people. There isn't a single person above you that's ever going to drag you down, because that's physically impossible. It's always the people, quote unquote, below you. And then you're going to hear people say things like, well, we shouldn't talk about who's above and who's below. Absolutely you should, because these are gauges as to who you are, and where you're going on your journey. Reach up. Anybody above you that's willing to reach down and pick you up is a collaborator, is a level 5, is somebody who's willing to look past the third dimension and the tripe of it all, right? Anyone that wants to drag you down teaches you to set healthy boundaries, to say that I'm not worried about what you say, think, or do. I'm going to carry on and continue to do what I do. All of these people in every single one of these positions is absolutely mandatory and absolutely needed for you to achieve and to acquire the life that you want to acquire. Understanding this and grasping this helps us really turn a corner and be like, fuck, there's so much more out there for me to do. I'm not going to sit around and bitch about what he said, she said, they said. I want to have this experience. I want to learn. I want to learn what it takes to grow and become. And that shit's fucking beautiful. That's what makes life stunning. I could go on for hours.
No, I'm like sitting here just smiling because so much resonates. And again, I think it highlights that idea that we are a work in progress. We all are. But I think you brought up something really interesting in that soliloquy, my friend. Mm-hmm. The idea of boundaries. It's a bit of a mystery for some people. And I'll speak from personal experience. I struggled with that for many years. Okay, I'll be honest. I still struggle with that because I think to get to the things you're saying, to become healthy collaborators, to shed old skin, to truly love ourselves. Like what I realized, did I ever really love myself? Okay, how do I get to love myself? Because then I'll find someone that will truly love me because I'll know how to love myself. I think that goes hand in hand with healthy boundaries and mental health. How do we set those boundaries?
Through chaos.
Is that how? Okay, legitimately, I want to hear your opinion because it's something I've been exploring within myself, within my work, Mind Blossom. We obviously any conversation around mental health for any topic, you think about boundaries. To be honest, this idea of boundaries has been kind of this unreachable tangle to me for a long time, and I will say the pandemic really shone a light on that for me. And I know pandemic was horrible. And I mean, it's something we'll deal with for the rest of our lives. It's, you know, people are like, oh, it's gone away. It's done. No, it's like the flu. It'll always be there. But what happened, you know, in those first couple of years, 2020, especially 2021, I think we saw this emergence of the need to look at people holistically. And this is what I mean by that. For a long, like, okay, again, I'll speak from experience. For a long time, I felt like there's Yulia, but I always felt like I needed to staccato myself, if you will. You know, there's like school Yulia and work Yulia and personal Yulia and friend Yulia and girlfriend or wife Yulia, whatever it may be. And, you know, and I think this is part of like the perfectionism and this idea of, you know, don't show your cracks in certain situations. You know, if you're struggling at home, you put on a brave face at work and school, you push through, you get those straight A's, you kick ass on that project at work, et cetera, right? And vice versa. I think, you know what I'm trying to say. And it like came crashing down on me during the pandemic. And it's something I've been working on. And it's something that we're seeing a lot now, you know, in the post 2-3 years after the pandemic, especially with the younger generation that really had a tough time. Side note, I wholeheartedly cannot imagine having gone through the pandemic during my last year of university or last year of high school and the things you're missing on or starting school online. I just couldn't imagine. Anyway, I think we're just so far beyond looking at people in a fragmented way. We have to look at people holistically. And that's why we have to support each other. You know, even if you're at work, if you're going through something really traumatic at home, there needs to be that support and vice versa. And I think boundaries play a big role in that. But how do we set the boundaries? Because I feel like this is a legitimate question. I'd love to hear your opinion or thoughts on that, because it's how much harder said than done.
Well, it really all depends on what boundaries you're looking to set.
Sorry, it's so much easier said than done. I said that the wrong way.
I don't know. I think it's harder said than done. Wait, easier said than done? Yeah, no, now you got me confused. It's hard to do, right? But it really comes down to finding out what you're good at. And anyone can sit there, and I challenge you, audience, just think for a quick second. We'll give you some airtime here. What are you good at? Go ahead, audience. Think about it. Do. Right, what are we good at? And then build off that, whatever it is. And some people are like, I'm good at building paper airplanes. Great. You know, put a video out on YouTube. Teach people how to build paper airplanes. Building off what you're good at. Building off what you like is key. And what I mean by building off, I mean basing characteristics of yourself on things that you're already good at. And then facing the things that you don't like. So a healthy boundary is saying no to a lot of things. And not worrying about what others think of you. The key to not worrying about what others think of you is understanding that other people don't think of you. Anything that you think they're thinking of you is legitimately just you thinking. And when you understand that, you know that if I say, oh, this person doesn't like me because I've got a really amazing beard, you know, this is me projecting myself on them. So for me, I can then think to myself, well, let's be serious about that for a second. Because I'm overweight, I could say this person doesn't like me because I'm fat. Now, 20-year-old me would be insecure about that. 40-year-old me would say, that's just me saying that about them, projecting my insecurities onto them. So what do I do to make myself feel better about it? I don't know. Try not eating 4 slices of pizza, just eat 2 and hit the gym. Take action. Understanding where you are in every aspect of your life and taking action on it, because action fights fear. Inaction creates more fear. So how can somebody judge you for being fat if you're at the gym and you're doing something about it? And then this is where you realize that these people never judged you. It was always you. It was always you projecting your insecurities onto yourself through them. Always. And when you can see that you hit your own projections and that you're targeting yourself, then you know what you truly feel about yourself. And you say, okay, well, I'm going to start doing this, this, and this. Oh, they hate me because I'm always late for work. Well, why don't you fucking show up on time, Susan? Right? That small, subtle change takes it, right? But then again, there are powerful people out there that have always been powerful by being the second mouse. The second mouse always gets the cheese. The first mouse rushes in and dies. The second mouse steps over the dead mouse and grabs the cheese. So they feel that they can manipulate things from behind the scenes. And because most people lead a life of insecurity in the beginning, they tell lies. They say certain things that they think are going to elicit a certain result. And when you tell a lie to somebody under the guise of getting a response or an answer, you don't even trust that answer that you get from them because you yourself know, whether they do or not, that you lied to them about whatever the topic was. And if you've done that, then you know that the answer that they're giving back to you isn't a valid and legit answer, and you don't get any satiation or satisfaction from it. So again, it comes down to how we talk to ourselves. So if you're stressing about certain things, and if you're stressing about boundaries and images, you have to understand that if you're too tired to go out, just say no. Right? If you're afraid that you're going to lose your job if you say no, fuck that job, quit. If you're afraid that you're not going to be able to pay your bills without your job, understand that you do your best work when your back is against the wall. And most people too don't grasp the fact that if you want to make a lot of money, you have to constantly shift jobs. If you stay at the same company, they will not value you, and you will make 100,000 instead of jumping to another company that's going to pay you more to do the same job.
Yeah, that's so true.
You have to keep hopping, and you have to trust that the universe is going to be on your side, because you are the universe. Nothing bad can happen to you, the listener. Right? And then people will say, well, what about all these people that died? Something bad happened to them. Right? That understanding and comprehension of knowledge, again, these are probably NPCs. We don't know what death is, but we're certainly afraid of it. You talk about the pandemic. The pandemic told people not to go to the airports. The airports are shut down. So when you went to the airport, there was nobody there. But guess what? All of the flights were still going. You just didn't have the traffic because there was no way that they could legally say you can't do this, that, and the other thing. Like the whole vaccine passport and all that shit. I mean, I don't know where you stood on it, but I personally was completely against and saw through the tripe since the minute the word COVID first hit the airwaves. I said, this is trash, garbage, and bullshit. And I got canceled. There's a lot of people that canceled me and changed this, that, and they changed their tune. And I said, this is the funniest thing about being canceled, because I had warnings all over my Instagram account. And this person has often shared fake news, false news. Are you sure you want to follow? My following went through the roof because the world is fake. Everything around you, ladies and gentlemen, is fake. And it's trying to make you weak and cowardly. This is what it's trying to do. So for you to stand in the face of everything that they're throwing at you allows you to create your boundaries, allows you to create certain things. I didn't buy into any of this shit. And people will say, well, I know so-and-so that died from COVID. Yeah, I know a ton of people that fucking died from respirator abuse. I know a ton of people that died because they didn't make the surgery. A buddy of mine dropped dead of a heart attack, and he was an absolute anti-COVID. He was leading the charge out in BC. He was all over the news. Mac Parhar. And then just one day he's dead. He was ultra anti-COVID, and then just one day he's dead. Right? It seemed very nefarious and very fishy. Right? And then what did the news try to do? They said the news clippings were anti-COVID activist dies of COVID. He did not. He had a heart attack. Right? So every single thing that we see on the news is designed to create or elicit a version of you, because people just naturally listen. They're just like, okay, well, I won't do this. I won't do that. But that's bullshit. And that's where anxiety and insecurity and fear come from, because you're not doing what you know to be true. And when you have the opportunity to test all of these boundaries, you see that all of the stuff that they push on you is just bullshit. It's just poppycock. You can do whatever you want, as long as you're being respectable about it and not snapping at people, because you still have that human connection factor where, you can't be a dick. During COVID, they chained up the parks. It was funny as fuck because they had zip ties. I'm not even kidding. In my neighborhood, they zip tied the swings together, multiple zip ties, so that the kids couldn't use them. Right? So I went out with my knife and I cut the zip ties off 3 or 4 days in a row. And then they chained the swings up. So I went out with my bolt cutters and cut the chains. And then they set up cameras on the park. So I went out with my mask, my black shirt, and I cut the chains. It was ridiculous. I was at war with the city because it was hilarious. Right? So when you understand that every single person, for the most part, will do as they're told, and what they're told is bullshit, and everything that we're told is designed to make us push, is designed to make us do something, then there's more to it. Boundaries then become, what am I willing to accept in my life, and what do I see as bullshit? And the more If you set 1 or 2 boundaries, you gain strength. 2 or 3 boundaries, more strength. 4 or 5, more strength. 5 or 6, more strength. It's not like you set them all at once. You just understand what you're willing to put up with and what you aren't willing to put up with. And the more you're not willing to put up with, the more society and the world around us will bend to you. And that's you taking back control of your life completely.
And I think too, I mean, no matter where you stand, I have, my own views on COVID. I did take it seriously. I got vaccinated, all that. But one of my biggest issues was the fact that through COVID, but also just in general, and you see in the States a lot, we forgot how to have healthy debate, especially on big topics, especially when it comes to mental health. And I'm telling you about this audiobook that I listened to, The Art of Letting Go. They actually touch on this, and I want to bring it up here because it's totally, it's a nice segue to all this. We all can have our opinions, and of course, you want to make sure that your actions don't hurt anyone, and you're not, maliciously doing anything to impede someone else's life. But we can have different opinions, different thoughts, different ways of doing things. I mean, we're all human beings. We're all unique in that way. And we can still coexist. I think one of the biggest issues, and I think what's really exacerbated, especially here in the U.S., people's, mental health decline, is that we forgot how to talk to each other when we disagree.
Yeah.
We forgot how to have a healthy debate. I mean, I don't want to talk politics right now, but
go right ahead. This show's fun for that.
Just overarching. That's why I don't believe in a two-party system, and especially the way the U.S. does it. Yes, I mean, I agree and disagree with a lot of things myself, and then the next guy agrees and disagrees maybe with the opposite of what I do. But we've gone to a point where we can't even find some common ground, or whatever they call it here, reach across the aisle. And I think that's super, super dangerous, and I think that's creating, especially in our younger generations, more anxiety, more depression, and just adding to this.
So here's a different take on that from me. From my point of view, there are people that still wear masks in public, and you can tell. For years, Asians wore masks. The air quality was trapped and all that sort of stuff. But you see people still wearing COVID masks out there, and I know immediately that I don't need to waste my time talking to that person. I know that they're not a bad person, but that they believe the news. They believe it so much that they don't believe that they have an immune system, and they just can't see sort of what's around them. They don't have access to the information. They don't want it. So the conversation doesn't need to take place. So it's a healthy boundary. And like you said, we don't have the ability to debate anymore. And to anyone who's pro-vaccine, so let me also rephrase that. COVID vaccine isn't a vaccine. So the COVID, all the vaccines in the past are now suspect because of what they did with COVID, right? And I'm totally cool with people wanting to get vaccinated, not wanting to get vaccinated. You want to get vaccinated against the measles, you want your Hep B shot, you want this, you want that. Hell, every single one of us had a booster shot and a jab when we were in school. We were all riddled with some sort of chemical that nobody fucking questioned, right? And now we look at the HPV virus, we look at this, we look at all of the stuff that's going on, and all these women that can't have kids anymore because they got the HPV shot, and they got this and they got that under the guise of this, that, and the other thing. And the further down the rabbit hole that I went, I realized that all of the government agencies and all of the quote unquote countries that we live in, they're all designed to have us all lab rats and tests and stuff like that. All of the food that is just pure poison that they've been feeding us, the obesity rates that have gone through the roof, copious amounts of bullshit, the smoking industry, the quitting smoking industry, the taxation, the this, that, and the other thing, how it all sort of parlays out into one thing. And then you tie COVID in.
They create a problem, and then they also fix it. So it's a really toxic cycle.
So there's an entire collective of people out there that believe in the medical industry. They believe that there are people trying to cure you who benefit from you being sick. And it has also been said by anyone who's predominantly holistic that a extensive fast will cure everything in your body, because the majority of cancers that we put into our body come from food, and they thrive on the toxins that we put in our body. Remove all toxins and your cells regenerate the way they're supposed to. Now, I've never put that to the test, and anyone that talked about that literally got murdered. Like the entire Dr. Sebi airplane and everybody, like all these doctors, anyone speaking out against it, all the doctors that spoke out against COVID, they all got silenced and shut up. I got silenced. I got muted because I said anything. Like there was times where, like, you know, the media went full force in censoring anyone that had anything to say. And this is why the COVID vaccine can't be trusted. Simply because if it's a vaccine, if it's meant to help you, then we would all believe it to be true and we would all happily inject it. But to force people to not go into restaurants, to lose their jobs, to lose their livelihoods, to potentially die. Again, I know people that died because the hospitals wouldn't allow them to do their surgery. And they died. Not because they weren't vaccinated, because they were vaccinated, but just the bullshit lies of the overrun hospitals. And then they say things like we have to keep the McDonald's open. They shut down the gyms and they shut down everything healthy. And they said, don't be out in parks. They shut down public parks. And you know what was open? Drive-thrus. McDonald's drive-thru never shut down once. The liquor store never shut down once. You could get your booze, your cigarettes, and your fast food all throughout COVID under the guise of normality. You could walk into a restaurant, but you had to wear a mask. And then as soon as you sat down, you could take your mask off because it was all bullshit. None of it made any sense. And again, if you're 100% pro-vaccine, I'm not knocking you. I'm not saying anything that goes against you. I mean, in fact, I hope that you're healthy and happy. But I know that a lot of the vaccine injuries are there. And I love you. I've always loved you. You're one of those souls that I truly care about. So if we butt heads on this topic, you and I will have the ability to talk about it. Right? So for anyone that you don't have the ability to talk to, exactly. And for anyone that you don't have the ability to talk to about it, that's a boundary. Right? That's a helpful boundary. Those people don't need to occupy any of your time, even if they're fucking family, which is weird.
True. And I think that's a really good point, because I think a lot of people think that they have to, you know, they put these limitations on themselves. It's funny you say that, like with family or close friends, but it's okay to have boundaries with those people too. And I like what you said earlier. Like, look, we're talking about it. You know, we see things differently, and that's fine on this particular topic. But like what you said earlier, you know, if this person, you know, disagrees with me, or, you know, you can't have a, you know, open conversation, doesn't mean they're a bad person. You just don't engage with that at that moment, because it won't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think, again, wrapping up to this whole idea of looking at people holistically and not in a fragmented way, and also, setting those boundaries on like what you are and aren't comfortable with, and also just allowing the space in your being to have healthy debate or have conversation. I mean, there's a reason we're all unique beings. We're going to see things differently, but it doesn't mean we can't talk about it. And I think, and just a little side note, because, you know, we brought up so many different things, but the food industry, I was recently on a live stream talking about food and mental health as it relates to eating disorders. We had an online course that we focus on eating disorders, and I think it's really, really dangerous and insane when you think about how many ingredients and things we use here. I'll say North America as a whole, even though Canada is a bit better than the U.S.
No, we're not.
But okay,
not under Trudeau.
How many ingredients are legal in Europe, and we have no problem willy-nilly we put them in our food here, or we sell? Like, how many things don't exist in Europe? And I'm not saying Europe is perfect, and I'm using it as an umbrella, but
it's a different subsect.
I travel.
I
travel a lot for work.
Yeah.
And none of these things are allowed. So how come they're allowed here?
Because it's a lab experiment.
It makes you wonder. So it just makes you wonder.
When you look past it, you see that it's a giant lab experiment. You know, people are being called out on the chemicals that are going in. Like, there's a huge list of chemicals that are going into foods that, like, things are going to get banned. You know, Skittles up here should have been banned. Oreos are probably going to get banned because they're changing. There's so many chemicals in there, and people are like, oh, you think they're just finding them now? No, the manufacturers put this shit in there intentionally, right? To sort of see what it does. You take a picture of Florida Beach, 1968, no fat people. You take it now, everyone's obese, right? There's a huge push for that sort of stuff. Like, we are guinea pigs in some other system. I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but everything that's in North America is unhealthy. The chemtrails in the sky are unhealthy. The stuff that they're spraying to block out the sky, unhealthy. You know, people like chemtrails don't exist. Sure, they don't, you know? So it's like, is that a conspiracy? I mean, it was up until you start seeing spiral chemtrails. Like, why is a plane flying in circles? Any particular reason?
I also just think you're right. There is this like obsession with, honestly, the fast food industry and this lack of education, awareness of what we put in our bodies. And it really, I think we can, tie this back to mental health, because we know our overall health includes our mental health. And, if we have healthy bodies affect healthy minds affect healthy bodies. But, we focus on the wrong things here, but then there's this like resurgence of like a diet culture here, and diet pills, and how to lose weight. And again, it's like this, it's like the Norton antivirus. It's like they created the viruses, and then they also created the antivirus. And it goes in a loop.
100%.
Same kind of idea.
Yes.
And I talked this in my live streams too, because then you put in, this focus with social media and like looking a certain way and the perfect bodies, and there's such things now, Adam, as eating disorder influencers. Yeah, you heard that right, influencers.
Yep.
And it's just, how there's a lot of us doing really great work on mental health awareness, but how do you break through some of this bullshit to be able to actually, change the trajectory for future generations? Because we're getting more and more connected via, social media platforms. And I think that unless there's going to be some sort of guardrails, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
So if I can say something that'll probably, resonate with you, when you again grasp the brevity of this reality that we're in, you understand that every single thing that you're doing, Yulia, for mental health has nothing to do with anybody other than you. And that's stunningly beautiful, because you're doing exactly what you need to do. And anyone who chooses to listen is going to be blessed with your message. And when you truly grasp that, you stop trying to speak for them or what you think they want to hear. You step into your own voice and you start speaking the things that you know you need to say. And when you push that, you do that. This is an example of that is if you're trying to lose weight, like you said, all these dietary pills, this, that, and the other thing, you can't lose weight eating diet bars and power foods and this, that, and the other thing, because that's all chemicals. And there isn't a single skinny person or healthy person or somebody who's quote unquote in shape that's eating those things. Not one. Everybody that's doing the thing that they need to do, moving accordingly and this, that, and the other thing, watch what they're eating. They're eating as close as they can to whole foods, this, that, and the other thing inside, and portion control and times to eat, because we've been tricked. How many times have we heard that breakfast is the most important meal of the day? That's one of the worst psyops in the entire world, because that's absolutely not true. And when we believe these things, we have a hard time navigating or circumnavigating what we need to be true. But for when it comes to mental health and when it comes to, what are the future generations gonna understand or comprehend, the truth is, between now a 37-year-old you and a 47-year-old you, every ounce of everything that you put into trying to make it better for the younger kids makes your life better. And we've also been told not to be selfish. 100% do not be selfish. Think of this, think of that. Like, how many times, back to COVID, every single person I know that got the vax didn't do it for health reasons. They did it because they wanted to travel or because they wanted to protect grandma. And that was the biggest tripe ever. And I was saying this earlier, COVID vaccine isn't a vaccine. It's an mRNA disruptor, right? But they called it a vaccine so that everybody out there would be like, oh, this is good. This is good for you. It was a trick. And the further down that rabbit hole we go, people will see more and more and more as the information comes out that we've all been played and duped by an industry that was just fucking with people for the sake of fucking with people. And when that becomes a truth and a reality, you start saying, what else is going on? So the mental health is the most important thing in the world. But like we talked about earlier in the show, you got to have shitty things to have cool things. So you got to understand that, the government will fuck with you, i.e. the Tuskegee experiments. That's a crazy one that they've fully admitted to, right? Oh, here, we're going to vaccinate you against syphilis. Oh, no. We're actually going to inject you with syphilis and monitor you for 60 years. So, I don't fully understand or grasp the idea of vaccines the way that they want them to be stated. I don't fully understand or grasp the idea of mental health as other people perceive it. What I do understand is how I see it and how I can speak on it, not necessarily from both sides, but certainly from an open perspective, because every single ounce of everything is growth and the desire to understand and comprehend. I mean, I've said this 1,000 times. If you can't challenge your own beliefs, you've made yourself a prisoner of your own mind. And this is one of those things where again, healthy boundaries and all that stuff comes from your ability to really adapt to what it is that you're doing and how it is that you're going about your life. Because at the end of the day, and it's, again, we're not allowed to think selfishly, but at the end of the day, it's always only been you inside your head perceiving, deducing, quantifying, qualifying, and then stepping into purpose, stepping into soul. There's a lot of people that were pieces of shit back in the day that are great now because they fucking quantified. And, it's all for you. Literally everything that's ever happened around you, everything that you've ever been drawn to, everything that you've ever grown from, it's all for you. The one common denominator in this entire world is that you perceived it. From your perspective, you are the center of the universe. And we're not allowed to believe that. We're not allowed to believe that. We're taught that we live on a floating space rock in infinite and expanding nothingness. And that what we're doing is unimportant. That's fucking bullshit. You, Yulia and Andrea, you are the center of the universe. And we all exist because you're observing us. We're here for you. This whole thing is yours. It's your game. We're just players in it. And that's the coolest thing in the entire world when you truly, truly comprehend that. People will have questions. Well, how come I could be the center of the universe and Steve can be the center of the universe over there? Easy. Multiverse. We are overlapping universes, each and every one of us. And there's a theory, too, that those who are conscious come from source, come from consciousness, right? And that's the thing. So my consciousness isn't mine. It is the consciousness that we're all experiencing. I get to experience myself through you. And you get to experience you through me, how I could perceive you or how you could perceive me. I'm a different version of you. I'm another piece of the consciousness. You, as a piece of the consciousness, get to talk to me as a piece of the consciousness, and the consciousness gets to experience the consciousness. Once we remove ourselves as the entity that is Yulia, the entity that is Adam, you truly understand that you are the reason for life. It's you. You're the center of everything. And that's the coolest and most comprehensive thing in the world. And the universe does not want you to know that. Because what's the point? What if you showed up here with all the knowledge of the universe? You just be here being like, I am the universe. Snap my fingers, create this, create that. Nah, you're here to forget who you are and then find out. You're not born into this world. You're born out of this world. Your meat suit comes into this world just like a scuba gear suit. When you go scuba diving, you got to put a suit on. You slid into your meat suit and you grew with it, right? But who you become while you're here is the whole purpose of being here. You're born out of this world, not into it.
Interesting perspective, I will say. And I love having all sorts of these conversations. And I will say what's really triggering right now for me is, as a woman, hearing that perspective and hearing, the like selfless part of it, to focus more on yourself as being part of the world as opposed to, making sure the world fits around you, instead of you fitting yourself into the world, especially as a woman, because from a very early age, we're taught to like mold to the world, mold to people. Yeah, don't be selfish, be selfless. And that's such a different and interesting perspective that I think has a lot of really good lessons. And I also think in the work that you're doing and even the work that I'm doing and some of these conversations that we have, whether podcast, live stream, et cetera, I think it's also really powerful to note or highlight that, and I'll speak from my experience. Let me know if this resonates with you. In speaking of this stuff in your consciousness is what has truly allowed me to heal. So there is like a selfish
component to it, not in a malicious way, but some of my best healing internally has come from opening up and talking about my experience, about and sharing the things that I've gone through and sharing the struggles. And I also think that's something to remember. And it's also an interesting thing through your pain, through sharing your pain, there's real healing. And then I sometimes wonder, sometimes I go down some deep rabbit holes. I think that's the only way to truly heal is to share it, to feel like you're part of something bigger. I don't know. Maybe.
This is episode, 280 maybe. And I'll tell you, my first 50 episodes were trash, but they needed to happen. My next 50 episodes were okay, but every single episode that I put out, I feel I'm doing better and better and more. So when you say speaking on your pain is therapeutic, I know I'm looking at you right now. Well, not looking at you, but I can see your energy. And I know where you're coming from. And I know the battles that you're about to go through because you're destined for something pretty fucking spectacular. And you're at the very precipice of that path right now. I mean, you've been dabbling around with it your whole life, but you're at a point right now where you're going to understand that speaking your message, your opinion, your version of what's going on is what's going to be able to change and translate you as an entity, as a piece of consciousness experiencing consciousness. And this selflessness, break it down. The selflessness that that your character is still playing by this, it's almost self-righteousness. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a, we've been taught a certain thing our whole lives way. So you're still trying to maintain this other people are more important than me statement. And the truth is that's absolutely incorrect. You're the most important person that's ever existed. And when we do truly grasp that, and I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to the entire audience when I say that. You are the most important person that's ever existed. And when you believe that and when you start acting accordingly, I don't mean acting with bravado. I don't mean acting egoically. I'm the fucking greatest. Meh, meh, meh. Right? When you start acting with pure love, because that's who you're supposed to be, the whole world opens up to you. And you understand certain things and you understand sort of your position and how things were supposed to be. But understanding and grasping that everything that you're doing for you. You're doing because you're creating a world that you need to create. You're creating a world, you're offering to the world the one thing that you never had growing up. And that was comprehension of self. That was comprehension of mental health, of an understanding. You know, in your path and your experience, you know the power of the mind. You know that these are things that you didn't have that you wish you had. So what are you doing right now? You're creating it. You're offering it to the world. But in doing so, you're giving it to yourself first. Therefore, you're taking care of that little girl inside you that needed this shit when you needed it and it wasn't there. And this is it's one of the most selfish and selfless things that you'll ever do. Again, like I said, episode 280, this show has been my therapy, my ability to get better at what I do, to get better at speaking, to get better at sharing a message that may or may not prevent somebody from fucking committing suicide. Because I come from deep, deep, dark depression. And now I remove it from people without meds through an idea. That's how powerful the brain is. People still believe that the brain is a pile of goo inside your body that's firing off synapses. It is absolutely not. I mean, it is. That's what your brain is. It's a pile of goo inside your body, right? But consciousness isn't the brain. It's not your brain's not having thoughts. It's tapping in. The radio isn't creating music. It's tapping into a frequency and broadcasting it. Your brain, your gut, and your heart are three entities that are you. This is how you have the ability to argue with yourself. And there's three of you. So you actually get the ability to watch yourself argue with yourself. And it's fantastic. And this is what we don't understand. But it's been talked about in every piece of scripture. Consciousness, higher consciousness, and id. Ego, id, and higher consciousness. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Trifecta. In every aspect of everything, there are three entities all living inside you. And this is absolutely massive. This is where you get to be at war with yourself, right? If you're yelling at yourself, who's yelling and who's listening, right? This is the thing. This is the inner conflict. We think that we're one entity having an experience. We think that we stop at our skin, but we don't. It's like saying that your brain is creating the universe, or your brain is creating thoughts, or your brain is creating things, is exactly like saying you and me are inside this universe. And the thing that's creating this universe is the cell phone that you're talking to me on. The idea that something inside of here is creating here is absurd. So we're actually in an experience. We're in the middle of something. And we should have some more fun with it. So
true. So powerful. Honestly, we're probably going to wrap this up soon. I could talk to you forever, but I literally have chills and I got a little teared up. I'm sure you remember it's about me. I'm super sensitive, super emotional. I always cry, and I'm proud of it. But when you said that, what we're doing is almost an ode to our younger selves. It's what I wish someone would say to me. It's what I wish I would have known. It's the support I wish I would have had from, a fellow young woman. I think that should be the title of this episode, an ode to our younger selves. There you go.
There you go. I'll do it then.
I don't know. It's really, it's not just nostalgic to think about, but it's just powerful because that's an experience, right? There's peaks and valleys, and we grow and we learn, and we're working progress.
100%.
What else can I say?
Oh, plenty. You'll have plenty to say. And I'm super excited that you and I have rekindled our friendship over this podcast. And it's so nice to have you back in my life. I'm looking forward to being on your show and doing what I can over there.
I will definitely have you on. I wrap up my spring season series because I do spring and fall. I would love if I could reach out to you like end of August and get you in one of my first few episodes. I would love that so much, and so we can continue this conversation.
I would say, I would sorry to cut you off. I would say one thing. I would say the idea that you have to have a spring and fall season is no bueno. I would say when the mood strikes you, record. I would say you've got way more power inside you than you even understand or comprehend, and that your voice needs to be heard. And the first person that needs to hear your voice again is your little girl, is the girl inside you. The more you speak, the more she's heard, the more she's validated. And the more you speak, the more other people get to hear what you have to say. And what you have to say is ultra important. The fact that you that you have the desire to speak means that your message is important. And people will mock that and say, oh, that's not true. People say a lot of dumb shit, right? The people that are saying dumb shit resonate with somebody. And the people that need to hear your message are going to find you. So to limit yourself by saying I've got a fall season and a spring season is essentially just you being afraid of your own voice, afraid of your own power, and not stepping into purpose. Now, I know we've all got busy seasons and busy times and this, that, and the other thing, but I think that you should record whenever the mood strikes you, and I think that you should reach out to whoever you want to reach out to and talk to whoever you want to talk to and crush it, because you've always had one of the biggest hearts that I've ever met. That heart light needs to be projected, and the world needs to know who you are.
You've really inspired me to think about things a little differently after this episode, and I love that. This is what I love about conversations and having the ability to have conversations. And again, you don't always have to agree, is because you can walk away from what you might deem a simple conversation a changed person. And
absolutely.
I'm just so thankful you invited me to be a guest, and so thankful for this almost an hour and a half we've been talking, and I can't wait to chat again, truly. Thank you.
Excellent. So now for the audience, I'm going to put this in the show liner notes, so they're going to be able to have the links, but where are they going to be able to find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. People can reach out to me. I'm on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. I don't use that as often. The best way would be LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram.
So where do they, what's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram handle is at Yulia, not Julia. I'm sure you can remember. I struggled. Everyone called me Julia, so that's an ode to that. And it's my name, which I'm sure they'll find in the notes, Yulia and Andrea, on Facebook and LinkedIn. And
does Mind Blossom have a website, or are you guys still building that out?
No, we have a website. So anyone interested in what we do, and I hope you are, it's mindblossom.org.
And you can email us anytime at info@mindblossom.org. And my personal email is yulia@mindblossom.org. Super simple. If you want to reach out, say hi, or inquire more about what we do.
Absolutely amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. She's going to be an absolute legend coming up. She already is, but soon you're going to hear about it. So thanks again for being on the show. And ladies and gentlemen, in the infamous words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Stay connected with us directly through the mentalmasteryalliance.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag TMMA or tagging us at the Mental Mastery Alliance. To have your voice heard on the show, leave a voicemail or send a text to 647-338-1265. Long distance charges may apply. If you love us, leave us a review. If you hate us, you spend your time in weird ways, but also leave a review. Every review on iTunes tickles the algorithm, helping us grow. Until next time, unity over division. This concludes the most surreal portion of your day.
You got it, Pontiac.